Okay, welcome back to Unbound Being. First off, I'd like to thank all of you who compliment or thank me for making these videos. It is obviously I have not enough time to respond to all the comments and things, so sometimes when I have a little bit of time I do, but don't be offended if I don't respond to your comments because I just don't have all the time. Today I wanted to speak about really the fourth dimension, the dimension of time, and how it relates to different dimensions, including the 3 dimensions below it, and how it relates to the 5th dimension above it. And why it's so important to understand the different dimensions we live in and to master these dimensions. Because if we live in a multiple stacking system of dimensions, up to God knows how many dimensions, it is important to understand these dimensions so that you can function well within them. Now, we know that we have, and I'll try to put in some images or GIFs, images that you could see some movement there. But basically, the important thing to see here is we know that we have the dimension, the first dimension, let's say, is forwards and backwards. Then you have right and left, the second dimension, and then the third dimension, up and down. So this is the 3-dimensional world we live in, and we all understand that. It's still a mystery. It's still a mystery, like a magical thing, because although we know we can walk forward and walk backwards and go up and down and left and right, it still is a very mystical thing, that a mysterious thing that you're moving through space and time. So we do understand it, though. At a certain level, we understand it very well because it's a practical level that we live in. And then there is a 4th dimension, and none of these dimensions are separate. It's not like one comes and then the other one comes and the other one comes. It's more like it comes down from the complexity of the highest dimensions down into the lower dimensions, but not the other way around. So we understand forward and backwards. Because if you walk forwards, and you might bump into something. And we know that when you're driving with a car forwards and there's a wall or something solid in front of you, you don't want to hit that thing, right? Because you'll smash through it. And we know all those things with gravity and stuff, that momentum that come with it. So we also understand that if you are standing on a ledge somewhere on a building and you're walking across like these daredevils do on these high structures, and you make one misstep to the right or to the left, that you fall down and you'll be going down. So your boat going sideways. If you don't understand that, then you will damage yourself. And if you are on an apartment building and you're over the balcony, if you go over the balcony, you go forwards over the balcony and you go downwards through the gravity, then you smash on the floor and you kill your body, right? We understand that. We live in that realm. We live in the 3 dimensions, and we understand it, that it has certain functionalities and practicalities that we have to respect. If we don't respect it, well, we pay the damages, right? But now comes the 4th dimension. The 4th dimension is the dimension of time. Now, you got to understand, at a certain level, we use models. And models, one of the models we use is a simulation, a holographic simulation. So imagine a flower of life, a universe that the mechanics of this quantum system, this quantum hologram, imagine it being a flower of life, which mechanics is the flower of life. And so it's a system of stacking complexities. And you got the 1st dimension, 2nd dimension, 3rd dimension, right? It really comes down from above down into the lower realms, but we use it for now to say that you're stacking it from below to up. These are all models, right? Now add another dimension to the 3rd dimension in this flower holographic system, which is time. So that extra dimension allows more complexity. It allows because as you can see, you can't move forward and backwards if you don't have time. So really, to state the thing that moving forward or backwards is a dimension, it's not really true unless the 4th dimension of time would be there, because you can't be hiking somewhere or moving towards something or away from something or left or right to something. You can't do that unless there is the possibility of this 4th dimensional aspect, which is time. However, time is not really the right word. It should actually be movement or change. So it's the complexity of the holographic flower of life, the simulated dimension of allowance for change. Really, it is change. Time is change, or change is time. We call time change, right? But the thing is, it's not happening in time. Change or movement, or my going through this video, is not happening in time. It's all happening in the now. So there is only the now. There is only the now when you move forward or backwards or left or right. It's always now. You're always moving now. And so the fourth dimension of time is a dimension that allows everything to fold or move in such a way that it adds a more complex dimension to the already existing, let's say, dimensions. And I'm describing a model, so we gotta give the, we gotta excuse the incapacity to put these things into words. I'm trying the best, but words are very limited. So I'm gonna put in these images as well to give you some kind of idea. But one of the models that you can use for it, we'll look into that one as well, which is the toroidal field or the tesseract or things like that. They are models to kind of give you a visual idea of a stacking system of complexity. So you can not only move forward and backwards, you can not only move left and right and up and down, but you can now also move through time, right? So that's the fourth dimension. However, at the current situation that we're in this world, we're dealing with the majority of humans on the earth that don't understand the fourth dimension. They think that the fourth dimension, time, is something that moves from the past and goes towards the future. So that somehow you're here. Let's say I'm gonna say the past is over here instead, right? And this future is over here. So you're going from here to there. And they think that the way that time is now described on our earth by science and the general population is that you're over here on this hairline of the now, this minute stripe that's moving slowly, second by second, minute by minute, right? Basically into the future. So there's a lot of past, there's a shitload of future, right? And or infinite past and infinite future, and there's just this really tiny slice of now. And there's actually a misunderstanding of time. And this misunderstanding of time causes a lot of damage to the psychology, to the capacity, to the level of interaction, and on a personal level, the harmony, and on a global level, on a cultural level, on a macro level for the society. Disharmony. When you do not understand any of the dimensions, any part of a dimension fully, that will cause disharmony within that dimension and all levels below it, and below it, not above it. So what are we're talking about? Well, imagine this. If you don't understand walking forward and backwards, you bump your head. If you don't understand up and down, you jump off a building, you crash, right? You damage your body. If you want to step leftward and you step into a piranha pit, you know, or lake or something, or in a waterfall, you're going down. So we have to understand the dimensions, otherwise we damage ourselves. That's why we try to protect little children from doing silly things, because they'll walk straight into something or fall off something, right? They don't understand the dimensions yet, and so they damage themselves. Now, if we don't understand the time dimension, we have another problem, and this is why. If we believe that time is something that has coming from the past and is moving towards the future, and there's only this little tiny hairline of now, which is the moment which is moving through time, then we have a misunderstanding of time. Time is actually a dimensional allowance within the holographic simulation for movement, for change. And it all happens in the one and only now. The one and only now. There's no past nor future. There's just one big nowness, complete in the moment presence, where everything takes place. However, the dimension of time or change allows for things to change, and within that parameters of time, we have a few extra tools. You could say management tools of time. And one of them is the mind, which is going through all these dimensions. And the second one that arises from the function of mind within this time dimension is memory. So memory is an effect of the mind making sense of the fourth dimension. However, when it hasn't made complete sense of time, when the mind is not optimally realized, hasn't realized the truth of the now, it interprets it wrongly as a historical time. And along with that historical time, it fixates on memory, which is a tool, like an app, like a time management tool. And the memory then creates the idea that, oh, I was over there 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, I did this, I did that, I did da 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 da, and the mind starts talking about history, which is not really true, because even the remembering of history takes place now. There's nothing other than now. There's only now. Now is not moving anywhere. It's not going through time. But that's how the mind would interpret it if it doesn't understand time fully, if it doesn't understand the fourth dimension completely. The fourth dimension is the extra dimensional allowance for change within the holographic field of the complexities of the already existing dimensions. So it's a stacking or lowering or upping from complexities. It's an extra dimensional flower capacity to have a more complicated or more complex dynamics within the holographic simulation system. So, but it's all happening now. The reason why it seems to the majority of people on the planet right now as a historical thing is because the mind hasn't evolved to the level of understanding the fourth dimension completely, which causes a lot of pain. Because if you think that, you know, something happened to me, something or other when I was a child, or this or that, or the trauma that got there, or the dog that bit me, and the emotion that was stored along with the memory, because that's the kind of emotional, let me just turn this thing off for a second. The emotional memory body, right? So you got this mind and with historical memory, and then also it is attached to the ideas that it had for what happened to it, the traumas and all these things. So you got emotion and memory is like a one thing. And then the human being falsely identified with memory as though memory is the fact, as though memory is the highest reality of time. It considers itself to be a body that was born by a mother and father and was raised and had these experiences, and these experiences led to what it is now. Instead of understanding that what it is now is the now which is unfolding and changing. It always allows for change. And this is why people get so stuck in these short lives, and in many of them by their 20s are so stuck they don't learn anymore. Why? Because their memory bank is full. They don't allow for the memory to be emptied out by quantum resting. And so what they got is they end up being lost in time, or lost in the memory, because they're not really lost in time, because time is nothing but change. They're actually lost in memory, which is unchanging. So the tool, the management tool that is the memory, is what they're stuck in. They're not stuck in time or in change. They're really stuck in the management tool, which they misinterpreted because they understood it to be the facts, the images of, oh, I was a baby, oh, look at the picture here. I was a little baby there, and I was with my mommy and my mate, and blah, 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 right? So, oh, last year we went on a holiday there here, and everybody lives in the past because they live in their memory. They can't, of course, live in the past because memory takes place now. Everything is now. There is nothing other than now. Now is taking place now, and there's only one now. There's no different nows. There's no, you don't even different moments, you could say. There's only different situations of change, but that's just because we're looking at the lower levels of the dimensional shifts, where my hand is moving from here to here. I'm looking at left and right, you know, and I'm looking at forward and backwards. I'm looking at up and down, and I say, well, my hand was here, but now it's here, and now it's here, and now it's here. So I can remember that my hand was here once a few seconds ago, but now my hand is over here. And we call that, through to memory, we call that fixed frame memorizing, and therefore seeing things as subsequence or as succession. We see it as succession, but that's a lower function of the mind when it has a bad interpretation of time. So what I'm saying is that at the level of the human collective on Earth at this moment, the average human, therefore, is erroneously interpreting time as a historical movement of all universe, all physicality moving through some kind of thing that goes from the past to the future. This is not true. The universe or time is now. There is nothing other than now. And the only thing that seems to give an idea or a false interpretation or a false religious belief or an incomplete idea of what time really is, which is a dimensional allowance for change, it's interpreted by the non-realized mind, the people who haven't realized yet what this fourth dimension actually is at its highest level. This is the cause of the effect that the mind gives, or the interpretation that the mind then gives to succession or subsequence, right? Movement, change. So, in other words, the universe or the holographic system is now but an incomplete realization of the time dimension, of the fourth dimension of time, gives the mind a wrong interpretation of a historical thing that's going from the past to the future, when it really is only happening now. The problem with this is that the persona, or the identity that a person takes on and believes himself to be or herself to be, is based on this historical malinterpretation. So the human being, who is really a being of now, due to a malinterpretation of time or a bad understanding of the fourth dimension, gives a false interpretation to time as though it's a historical thing. Therefore giving lots of importance to history, thinking that the memory defines the person, and therefore humans are identified with a persona, which is a construct of belief systems based on memory, thinking that they are that baby that grew up here, went there, did this, to this school, had those friends, and went to college, and then went and worked for this company and that company, and that day something really bad happened because my dad died, my mom died, or whatever, right? All these stories that people have. Now this board is like, you could make a board, right, and put all the pictures on it like some people have. A lot of people have it in their house. They have a board with all these pictures on it. And that's me when I was a little 3-year-old, and that's me with my granddad, and that's, oh, my granddad died, I was so sad. And then this over here, we went to, a holiday here, we went over there, and they have this big board, and that's their persona. Because the belief of this historical thing supersedes, or it takes the foreground because it's a malinterpretation. So the memory tool, the mind tool that is the memory, which is based on this historical memory system, the managing system, the app, it's like an app, right? That's on your phone to keep your calendar and stuff like that, so you know where you're going and where you've been. That memory system has been given more importance than the fact that we're actually in the flow of the now, the ever-present now. And the point of it all is that most human suffering on Earth, on a private, personal level, let's say, and a collective level, is based on this malinterpretation, this bad understanding, incomplete understanding of what time truly is. And if we do not understand that, we do just like not understanding when you're walking backwards and forwards, bumping into things or falling off of things, we bump into this mechanics, this dysfunctional world that we live in now. It's because most people are stuck in a bad interpretation of time. Imagine somebody doesn't have good eyes, and for example, my sister has one eye that doesn't see properly, so she doesn't see depth, right? So in other words, like when you go, it's like when you have one finger up and you close one eye and you try to grab the finger, you know how people they've done that, and you're like, oh, you can't really see the depth, you can't go forward enough and know that right now I can close, and people miss the finger, so they go and they miss the finger. Well, if we don't see time properly, then we grab the existential reality of this holographic field at the fourth dimensional level. We grab it. We grasp it. We don't grasp time properly. Like if I would go and close one eye and try to grab the finger, you miss. You don't grasp it. You're not grabbing it. You're not grasping it. Why? Because you're missing the point, you're missing the location, you're missing the understanding, you're missing the comprehension, missing the knowledge, missing the information, missing the intelligence, the capacity to understand what time truly is. Time is now. So once you don't understand that, now this is the consequences that come from it. For example, right? We are constantly, at the malinterpretation level, humans are constantly busy with time. busy with their past and busy with the future, always worried about tomorrow or next week or whether their business is going to be a success. And I'm part of that as well. Often I worry about things that I'm like, Jesus, what am I doing? I'm trying to fix a thing in the future based on an idea of the past when really all is now. And the funny thing is, when you're able to rest in the now with true master, true enlightenment, true liberation, should be the liberation of the memory, mind, person, this construct that tortures you instead of serves you. The mind and the memory, the function of memory should be a tool to know that you have to be somewhere at a certain time or remember that you have done certain things and learn from it. But it's now becoming, for most humans on the planet, the torturing tool, because it forces the human being's attention to focus on the memory and the projections of the future that is due to the memory. And so the bad understanding or the incomplete understanding of time causes this malgrasping, this malunderstanding, this misunderstanding, this incomplete understanding of time. Time really is now. And if you're in the now, then the universe of the fourth dimensional flow is perfect. The flowing of time is in harmony when the now is accepted to be the actual place of existence. The holographic simulated moment of everything, the universe, is now. So, but the mind, with its misunderstanding of the past future idea of time, therefore starts not living in the now anymore, because it's constantly obsessed with what it thinks it's time, which is the past and the future. So the misinterpretation of time or the misunderstanding of the fourth dimension basically comes down to the fact that the incomplete understanding of the fourth dimension by the mind, and this mind lives through all stages of all dimensions, but the misunderstanding of the mind, thinking that time is something that goes from the past to the future, causes the human attention to be focused on past and future, which is memory. Memory from the past and projection through constructs of memory from the past used to construct possible outcomes of the future. And then you get worry, and you get these other ones where people look back at the hurt they've been in. They say they were abused, or they were, their parents did this, or somebody did that, or they were raped, or they were abused at some other level. And so the mind tends to focus on the memory aspect, which is the management tool, and not at the moment, which is the actual fact. Now is the fact. This moment is the fact. Right here, right now, the universe is always in this now, the only now. There isn't, you can't even say this now, because this now would suggest there's another now. There is no other now, there's only now. Now is eternity. We're living in eternity. The fourth dimension of time is an eternal reality that adds complexity to the flower of life, simulated, folding, flowing cosmos, the universe itself. Time is a dimension of change, an allowance for morphing, change, flow, That's the dimension that's added onto forwards, backwards. It's not really added on, like I said, because forwards and backwards, you need to have the fourth dimension of time to even be going forwards or backwards. Otherwise, forwards or backwards makes no sense. If there's no movement or change or time, if the time change or movement wasn't allowed in the dimension, you couldn't even speak of going anything forwards or backwards because you wouldn't be allowed to move. So really the fourth dimension would be called change or movement, succession, but it's not happening through time. It's happening in the eternal moment. And unless we understand this and grasp this dimension to its fullest, we can't move into the fifth dimension, which is as within, so without. And I'll make another movie about that or another video about that someday, which is the other dimension of when you take the toroidal field, you could say it's time. It's a perpetual moment. It's a perpetual eternity, but it allows movement, but it comes back on itself. It's the toroidal field, and I'll try to put an image on that, preferably something that's moving, so you can see the toroidal field move as a donut. And everything in the universe basically is this toroidal field of energy that's coming on itself. You could say time is that movement for everything to be just coming in cycles and returning on itself, always new, always eternal, always present, but not moving through time. time, the way humans at this moment generally see it on the world, is wrong. It's a malinterpretation, and it focuses on the lower aspect of the memory, which is a tool was given to understand, to use within the time frame of movement, but not the fact. The fact is now. The malinterpretation, the wrong interpretation, is history going past and future. Past and future is a malinterpretation, a misinterpretation, a misunderstanding of what time is. Time is now. It's a toroidal now. And then when you go to the fifth dimension, we get an extra element, and the toroidal field will start to fold in on itself in a different direction as well. And that is as within, so without. So the fifth dimension is again a directional, or an extra layer of a dimension. Let me go into the fifth dimension while we're at it anyway, a little bit at least. Maybe I'll make another video about it later to go more detail. But so you now have an understanding of time. Forward and backwards, one dimension. Sideways, left and right, right? And second dimension. Up and down, third dimension. And now this toroidal field of ever-changing complexity is the fourth dimension. So now we have this whole thing we grasp. We're really living in the fourth dimension here, because we have time. We obviously are in time. We just are at the immature level of it as a general population of the planet. The humans at this moment have lost their way because of most likely the Pisces age, because it's the age of illusion. And so I think many civilizations before had a really good understanding of this before, but during the Pisces age we lost that. And all the books that have been burned, and all the, the Alexandria and the Library of Alexandria and all these things, these book burnings that happened through the age of illusion, the European age of lies, right? The 1,000 years that we've had, where the conquistadores 500 years ago, whatever, went to all the countries across South America and Central America and killed all the indigenous people, as many as they could. This is the age of illusion, of lies, and it's been centrally located in Europe as the European dominant age, where Pisces, the illusion of Pisces, the lies, the corruption, the selfishness, was prevailing energy of the astrological system, let's say, right? The holographic projected system. So we've been living through an age where many of the books and the knowledge that we speak of in these kinds of videos have been destroyed, and now it's coming back because of the Aquarian age, the age of truth, where everything that was false and was hidden and was occulted is coming back. So taking the fifth dimension, we're coming to in the fifth dimension, once we get the harmony right in the time dimension of the fourth dimension, we have to get also the understanding, or the understanding right, of the fifth dimension, which is as within, so without. So as within, so without. Now watch the toroidal field. We try to find one that has a toroidal field that folds in on itself as well. So everything that's inside is coming outside. So the fifth dimension is that extra dimension added on, or coming from down, going up, which way you want to look at it. You have forward, backwards, left and right, up and down. Then you have time, which is it's a directional dimension. And then you have as within, so without. So just like forward and backward, you have within coming without. So now the toroidal field starts to fold in on itself, and everything that's inside the toroidal field, not only as it comes in and out in time, it's also folding in on itself and bringing that which is within without. And the understanding of as within, so without, the fifth dimension, is another dimension we have to master if we want harmony. We have to understand that time is now, and we have to understand that what you see outside is a manifestation from the inside. And this is the fifth dimension. A full integration or harmonization or understanding or understanding or knowledge or realization or insight into the fifth dimension brings harmony at that level, brings the individual, or eventually, if it's even possible, the society at a macro level, to a level like many other species might have in the universe, who have fifth and sixth and seventh and all these dimensions, like we understand forwards and backwards, the first three dimensions. Because here we understand very well, you don't walk into a wall or something, and keep walking against the wall. I mean, that's what they say to people, right? People keep walking into walls, like, why do you keep bumping your head into the wall? Well, it's an expression of saying you're dumb. You don't understand the first dimensions, or the first three dimensions, forwards and backwards, up and down. you're literally dumb, right? You're stupid, basically, right? You're a numbnut, you're an idiot. An idiot doesn't understand these things. Well, from a higher perspective, there are species that look down on us and they say, wow, these people don't even understand time, the fourth dimension. You know, they think it's a historical thing moving through time on a hairline, going from the past to the infinite future. It's so stupid. I mean, it's eternally now. Time is just another dimension that allows change. Then they'll go to the fifth level, which is as within, so without. We blame the world. We blame the New World Order. We blame the government. We blame our parents. We blame everybody around us except ourselves, understanding that actually every single thing that is in my external life must come from within, because that is the fifth dimensional infolding or outfolding, where everything goes out and then it goes back in, because then you have experience, karma. It's like the karmic wheel of infolding, outfolding, as within, so without. So as you sow, so shall you reap. So your inner state dictates your outer things, because that's what you draw to yourself and the things you say and do and act. Then that has a consequence and folds inwards, dictates your inner, and then it goes out again. And that's how your life is folding from in, out, in, out, in, out. So as within, so without. So if you see the toroidal, and I'm hoping I can put this in the video, so you can see the toroidal field not just going as an apple-shaped donut coming in on itself like time, but then time folding in and out. And therefore, what you do affects the world outside, that behavioral and aspects that you do and interact and all the things you do, the activities and consequences of those activities, karma, the consequences coming into you again, dictating your behavior again, and then that folds out again in a new way. That's why if you become harmonic, if you find the divine harmonics, if you find the right, you master time and you master as within, so without, you become a master of not only the three dimensions, but the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension. It brings a harmony to the inner, and therefore it brings a harmony to the outer, and everything starts to harmonize, because you don't walk into walls. You understand the mechanics of time, or the fourth dimension, and you understand the mechanics of as within, so without, the fifth dimension. It's all about, of course, not understanding, but comprehending, or inner standing, or grasping, or realizing is probably maybe the better word, because it becomes a realization. You have to realize the reality of time. You have to realize what the fourth dimension means. We have to realize all these dimensions. The fifth dimension of as within, so without, that it's folding from within, manifesting. You think it's your parents and the world doing it to you, or we think these things. I'm not saying you necessarily, obviously, but we, in general, on this planet are at a level where we don't really understand that what we have within manifests outside. And then we think, oh, you know, you did this to me, and you did, and the government did this to me, and the New World Order is trying to do this to me, and the money system and the schooling system and the police and the whatever, right? And the elites and whatever, all these things. But technically the elites and everything outside is a manifestation of the misunderstanding or the incomplete understanding of how the fourth and the fifth dimension are functioning. And we can't even, because the sixth and seventh and eighth and all these dimensions, God knows how many above it, are also right here, right now. But we're so dense at a level at the third dimension that we don't even grasp completely what the fourth dimension means that our holographic game level, the simulation level that we've reached as this, whatever thing you want to call it, this holographic projection of astrological alchemy, light projections from the sun and the moon and the planets and this, whatever, this holographic game that's created where the stage is inside this crystal ball of flat earth or round earth crystal ball projection with lights coming in, manifesting through the platonic solids into this reality of a photon, electron, proton, holographic manifestation of physicality world where we are projected into by the dynamics or the mechanics of the complexities of all these stars and planets and energy fields coming from the outside through the lens into this holographic system of this simulation. The mechanics of the entire universe is at a certain level here. We're like at level 3 going into 4, but we're also overlapping into 5th. But most people on this planet at this moment don't understand the 4th because they think the 4th dimension of time is coming from the past and moving towards the future instead of understanding it's just a complexity of a dynamic dimension added onto the three levels below it, causing change. It's just the allowance for change in the moment, in the one eternal moment. Once we grasp that one, we can start moving way more into the fifth dimension of understanding how everything then, through time and dimensions and understanding and psychology, is folding from the inside out and from the outside back in, and that's the continuous the toroidal field and the folding, time folding. It's the, what do they call that, the tetrahedron or something like that? I think it's called the tetrahedron or something like that. It's this cube, this square within a square that can fold on itself. It's like the toroidal field is probably a better way because it's more three-dimensional or four-dimensional, or you could say multi-dimensional. It's more rounded than a square. Square is very scientifically mathematical, but it still functions as well as a function to explain these things. But anyway, in a nutshell, disharmony comes from not understanding any of the dimensions. If we don't understand backwards and forwards, we make mistakes. We poke out our eye because we walk into a branch or something like that, or we walk into a wall or off a cliff, which also goes down, which is another dimension, or up, you know, depending on what happens, and left and right. We don't understand these dimensions means pain, right? You don't understand how something works, then it means pain, right? And pain is there to show you, hey, you haven't figured out yet how it works, so go and figure out how it works. A child falls over, hurts itself, knows that you better not do that, because when you do that forwards with your head against the wall or something like that, it hurts. So you learn, you become better, right? You don't hurt yourself anymore when you learn. But at the level of the fourth dimension, we have to do the same thing, time. We have to understand time to its fullest, and not in this limited way that we now have in thinking it's a historical thing moving through time. If we don't understand that, we hurt ourselves. And at this moment in this world, most humans are hurting themselves using the time management tool called memory, because they don't understand that really everything is now, and the historical story of your life doesn't really have any real reality. It's a tool, like a samurai has a tool, you know, like a really good sharp sword. But if he doesn't know how to use it, and you give it to a child, it cuts itself open. I've given this example before, right? And in our world, of course, the New World Order in the Pisces age, they've taken away our power. They've taken away the knowledge of time, the true meaning of time, and as within, so without. And so now we are kind of handicapped, screwed up human beings on this planet, messing about at the third dimensional level with our planet, our species, or not our, but the species, the resources, the energy, and all this selfish, lying, criminal, corrupt behavior has taken over, because we're only functioning at the three dimensions. We understand those, how to dig into the soil and take minerals out and make things out of it and steal things from the earth, and we're very primitive. And then we don't understand the time very well, so we only use time at the level of memory, and most people therefore use memory to torture themselves. It becomes a samurai sword with which they don't know how to deal with, and though they're cutting themselves all over the place. They're sleeping with the sword, and most people are trapped in their memory, in their historical persona, their personalia, right? They're bored full of memories. And then there's another one, the fifth dimension, which needs to be understood again to get harmony. Because if you don't have an understanding of the fifth dimension, then again, there's disharmony. And so we blame the people outside of us, but really it comes from inside of us. And that's the as within, so without. Our world is a manifestation of the inside first. Clean your house on the inside, and the outside becomes harmony as well. So at this moment, I think we're looking at an Aquarian age where we have to start taking responsibility again, because the Pisces age was an age of illusion, an age of lies, deception, corruption, people trying to get monopolies. It's an Orwellian type of system where they wanted to force you to do their way, and it's a dark age. We really are coming out of a 1,000 years of dark ages. The Renaissance never got us out of anything. It got us out of maybe a very closed box system because of the Pisces age being deeper down in Pisces back, you know, whatever, 100 years ago. But the Renaissance never was just a liberation at a certain level. Where we need a lot more. We need to break free from a lot more shackles and lies and illusions, and religions and belief systems and indoctrinational systems before we actually get into the Aquarian age. And the Aquarian age might take, as they say, you know, in time, 1,000 years to unfold on the screenplay of this holographic lens we call flat Earth, round Earth, toroidal Earth, holographic Earth, simulation game. And the peak of the Aquarian age, where truth will be more at its peak, let's say, is maybe 500 or 600 years from now. You know, so we're never going to experience in this physical body, as I'm sitting here now, that that age from this body. You know, whether you are in another body or the cycle keeps going on, whatever. That's another story altogether. But we have to understand fourth dimension. We have to understand fifth dimension. Otherwise, we are in disharmony with that dimension. It's as simple as that. You don't know how to use the tool or the dimension, you haven't mastered the dimension, then we cause pain and suffering within that dimension to ourselves and others. If we don't master the fourth and the fifth dimension, just like if you don't understand walking into a wall, then we will be walking into walls at the fourth dimension. Metaphorically speaking, we're walking into walls. Metaphorically speaking, the whole human race at this time is walking into fourth and fifth dimensional walls. And we don't even know the existence of the sixth dimension. Sixth dimensional being, we don't even know. Most people haven't realized that to come even close. Maybe the ascended masters, well, not even the ascended masters, because they're usually false masters as well. They're stuck around, literally stuck around. So basically that's the main story here about the fourth and the fifth dimension.